My name is Jim Pete, and I am a fourth grade teacher. I'm currently reading the book The Lemonade Crime by Jacqueline Davies to my class. We are about to start chapter 3. So if you haven't read chapter 1 and 2, click on the playlists in my YouTube channel and find chapters 1 and 2 and go ahead and dive on in. If you haven't read the first book in this series, The Lemonade War, it's also in the playlists. Please go have fun, leave comments, and of course, subscribe to the channel. In chapters 1 and chapters 2, we're really getting the groundwork for this book. We got to see Jesse's perspective in the first chapter, and then we got to see Evan sort of take the baton in the second chapter as we realized that the money that was lost in the Lemonade War is likely in the possession of Scott Spencer in the form of an Xbox 2020. Now, is that true? We don't know. We don't know really a whole lot about Scott as a character. We just know a lot of negative. We know Jesse and Evan don't really like him all that much. He did help Evan with a lemonade stand at the beginning of the Lemonade War, but past that, we don't know a whole lot about Scott Spencer, other than he left quickly from the pool where the money went missing. In this book, he has purchased a 2020, and if you go back to the Lemonade War, he said in that book, if he ever got money, he would buy an Xbox. So here we are, he's got the Xbox. Chapter 3 is a Jesse chapter. It's called Eyewitness. Again, to my class, right setting, as we perhaps find out if anybody saw what happened. An eyewitness, noun, a person who actually sees something happen, and so can give a first-person account of the event. Jesse stood in the doorway, 1 foot inside the classroom, 1 foot outside on the playground. All the other kids had run outside, everyone except Evan and Megan. They were staying inside to finish their daily double. Quick question. Does Megan know yet what happened? Setting, sort of getting ready to go to the playground, and we can assume that it's sometime maybe in the late morning or early afternoon because they're going out for recess. Jesse didn't want to go outside if Megan and Evan weren't there. She still didn't know most of the fourth graders. Not enough to know who was friendly and who wasn't. And she knew she'd probably say the wrong thing to the wrong person, and people would laugh, or be mean, or just give her one of those looks she never understood, and then turn their backs on her. So remember, Jesse, when she was in second grade, they had that whole club that of kids who didn't like her. And then she skipped a grade, so now she's with the fourth graders. Now, she knows Megan really well. Obviously, she knows Evan really well. And remember, she did meet those girls when she created the franchise of the lemonade stands. Obviously, she doesn't know them well enough to play with them yet, which I totally get. Maybe Jessie could stay inside and read her independent reading book instead. It was worth asking. She walked back to her desk setting, pulled out The Prince and the Pauper. It was a book her grandmother had given to her, twice actually. First, Grandma sent it at the beginning of the summer with a note that said, "Jessie, I loved this book when I was your age." Then a month later, she'd sent another copy of the same book with a note that said, "This book made me think of you, Jessie. Hope you enjoy it." So go ahead and highlight that paragraph. Do you remember in the first book, we kept seeing those fruit flies? They kept popping up. This book, we get this random piece of information that Grandma sent her 2 books, The Prince and the Pauper, the same book twice. Just seems like an out-of-place piece of information. Let's see if it keeps coming up. Jessie had laughed and said, "I hope she forgets and sends me birthday money twice." But Mrs. Tresky didn't laugh. She frowned and shook her head and went to the phone to give her mother a call just to see how she was doing. "Mrs. Overton," said Jessie. Evan had gone to the boys' room, and Megan was in the hall getting a drink of water, so the room was empty except for Jessie and her teacher. "Yes, Jessie?" Mrs. Overton looked up from her desk, where she was reading over what the students had written in their writers' notebooks that morning. Jessie had written about the fireworks that she and Evan and her mother had watched from their house on Labor Day. We saw those fireworks too. She'd used lots of long words like kaleidoscope, highlight vocabulary. Kaleidoscope is a variety of colors and shapes. And panorama. Panorama is a long view. And vigorous. Vigorous means you do it with a lot of effort. And vigorous verbs like exploded and cascading. Exploded, highlight, verb, big burst of energy. And cascading is like falling, a lot of stuff falling over, like cascading, a waterfall is cascading. So kaleidoscope vocabulary word, panorama vocabulary word, vigorous vocabulary word, exploded vocabulary word, cascading vocabulary. 5 vocabulary words there. She thought her paragraph was pretty good. Jessie heard Evan and Megan laughing in the hallway. That stopped her. The way they were laughing together, she didn't want them to see her. Staying inside with the teacher during recess, she was pretty sure that Evan would say, "That's not what 4th graders do." So she mumbled, nothing, and carried her book back to her desk. "You should go outside, honey," said Mrs. Overton. "You don't want to miss all the morning recess, right?" Okay, so there's a more defined setting. So it's morning recess, so it's still in the morning. "Right," said Jessie faintly. She hurried to the back door, the one that opened right onto the playground. When she turned to close the door behind her, she saw Evan and Megan walking into the classroom from the hallway. They both looked pretty happy, considering that they were missing recess and had to do math. Outside, a handful of girls were sitting at the picnic table folding origami flowers. Some of the 4th graders were swinging and sliding on the green machine. About 8 or 9 were playing kickball. All of Evan's friends, Paul and Ryan and Adam and Jack, were shooting baskets along with Scott Spencer. Where should Jessie go? She wondered if the boys were still talking about the 2020, so she drifted over to the basketball hoop. She sat down on the grass and pretended to concentrate on her book, but really she was listening to the boys' conversation. Jessie overheard Paul ask Scott, "How'd you save up that much?" They weren't playing a real game, just shooting free throws from the line. "Lots of ways," said Scott. Paul bounced past the ball to Scott, and he took his shot and missed. Jessie was glad to see that. "Like what?" asked Adam. "I did a lot of chores around the house." "There's no way you saved up that much money from doing chores," said Adam. "I did too," said Scott. Now he held on to the ball and dribbled it in place. Ryan held up his hands for it. It was his turn to shoot, but Scott wouldn't give it up. "What are you saying?" "I'm saying what I said," said Adam. "There's no way you saved up that much money just from chores." What he's saying, thought Jessie, is that you stole all our lemonade money from Evan, and everyone knows it. If only someone had seen him take it. If only there'd been an eyewitness. Highlight vocabulary word. We already talked about that word, but highlight it anyways. Like the crime shows on TV. Then Scott wouldn't have gotten off scot-free, no pun intended. A shadow fell across the page of her book. Jessie looked up, and there was David Kerkorian standing next to her. Highlight, new character. Jessie still didn't know a lot of 4th graders, but David Kerkorian was legendary.
Legendary. Legendary. Legendary. Legendary. Legend. Wait for it. And I hope you're not lactose intolerant because the second half of that word is dairy. No. Legendary.
Legend. Wait for it. Dairy.
Legendary. Legendary. Legendary.
Throughout the school. Everyone said he had all kinds of weird collections at his house. He kept a jar of peach pits on his dresser, and he added a new one every time he ate a peach. He had a box full of shoelaces from every shoe he'd ever worn. He even had a large brown envelope filled with his own toenail clippings. At least that's what everybody said, though Jessie was pretty sure that no one had actually seen the envelope. "You're not allowed to read outside during recess," said David. "I never heard of that rule," said Jessie. "Just because you don't know a rule doesn't mean it isn't a rule." David started picking at one of his fingernails, and Jessie wondered if he collected those too. "That's the dumbest rule I ever heard." "No, it's not," said David. "You could get run over sitting here. You're not even paying attention. A ball could conk you on the head. You could die." He started to walk off in the direction of the duty teacher. Jessie felt her face getting hot. What was David going to say to the duty teacher? Jessie stood up and hurried toward the school building. She would say that she had a stomach ache. She would go to the nurse. Mrs. Graham always let you lie down for a couple of minutes before sending you back to your class. It was a good place to rest and be quiet, a good place to think. And Jessie had a lot of thinking to do, not just about rules and recess, but about how unfair it was that Scott always escaped punishment and what she could do to change that. "Toenail collector," Jessie muttered under her breath as she hurried inside. So we didn't really learn a whole lot in that chapter. We just know that there maybe isn't an eyewitness and that Jesse really thinks he took it. We also kind of hit that rule following level really hard there, and we meet a new character, David Krikorian, who definitely want to highlight and put CH above. He is definitely a character that we'll come back and talk to again real soon. All right, so our next chapter is Hearsay. And it is a Megan chapter. We're going to go inside the building now to where Evan and Megan are and pick up the story where we left off with chapter 4. I am going to stop there. Thank you so much for joining me. To my class, awesome as always. To everybody else across the globe who's reading this, please leave comments below. Please leave any suggestions that you might have, and let's continue this discussion as we move forward with this book. Where are we going with this? We really don't know. Okay? Not a lot of plot points in that. I only came up with, I believe, 4. We shall see what you came up with. All right, guys, thank you so much for joining. Please subscribe if you can. And as I said, leave a comment or 2. Have an amazing day, and I will see you on the next page. Peace.